All right, now let's talk about personal fundamentals. So first off, like I talked about before in previous videos, we have basically what I'm going to consider 3 categories of what is fundamental in golf. Number 1 are going to be the true fundamentals, something that can apply to everybody. Anybody who tries to make those things better in their game is going to see improvement, especially if they can improve that area and not have any other area diminish. Those true fundamentals are low point control, aka the ability to control when the club face is hitting the ball and then hitting the ground. Number 2, face control. So our face can aim in the direction we want, whether we're playing a straight shot, a fade, or a draw. And it's hitting a consistent window. So it's, if we're trying to hit a draw, it's not way too open or way too closed. It's in a fairly consistent and predictable window. So we're hitting roughly the same start line every time. And then our path, which is going to control our curvature. We're trying to get our path in the right relationship to the face. So again, if we're trying to be a draw player, we want our face a little bit open so the ball has room to draw, but we're getting our path even more right of our club face so the ball is drawing every time. And yet again, it's not just getting the relationship right, it's having it be in an acceptable window. That way we're not hitting over hooks, or maybe we're not swinging far enough right and our ball's not really curving at all. So having it be within a consistent window so the ball's not just curving the way we want, it's also within an acceptable range so it's in control. 4th is contact on the club face. Hopefully in the middle of the club face, but if it's not, somewhere very close to the middle of the club face, and more importantly, in the same position basically every single time. Nobody's going to be perfect and do it every time, but the more consistent you can hit the ball in the same part of the face, the more consistent your ball's going to come off in terms of launch, speed, and direction, which gives you more control of your ball. And lastly is speed. The ability to create a baseline level of speed, and then the ability to control your speed, whether you want to hit a shot harder or you want to take off distance or you're trying to hit your normal distance. So those things I would call the true fundamentals. From there, we had a thing called adjacent fundamentals, which most people would call just fundamentals of golf. I've made my point why I disagree with them. Go back and watch that video if you want to see why, but the basic idea is this. Adjacent fundamentals are what most people would consider to be beneficial things for almost any golfer to add in their swing. Again, I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but that's probably the only way I could really sum up what people in the past have called quote-unquote fundamental. When I talk about adjacent fundamentals, basically it's saying get into balance during our swing, try and stay in our body parameters. Quick reference point for body parameters. If we drew a line on our head, line on our butt, we're not diving out of the parameters or standing up out of them. We're basically keeping our head and butt on those parameters, or at least close to it. And then we're just taking out the extremes. We're not going way inside or way outside or way one direction or another, however it is. We're basically just taking out the extremes during the swing and in the backswing as well. And we're making sure, again, our pressure isn't getting extreme one way or another, however we're doing it. So it's basically getting in balance, staying in balance, taking out the extreme elements of the swing. Most people would consider to be fundamental, which is a very broad range. You can do a lot of things within that area, which is why, again, I call it adjacent fundamentals because it doesn't really kind of bolt down anything definitive, and it really shouldn't bolt down anything definitive because all those different elements in our swing and how we swing and the positions we get the club in are really more tools that are going to affect the quote-unquote true fundamentals of golf rather than things that everybody needs to have in their swing, which is why I don't consider them to be true fundamentals themselves. I call them adjacent fundamentals because they're generally good principles to live by, but there's a lot of people who break the rules, so that doesn't mean you can't break the rules too, as long as you have the other parts of your swing moving and matching up correctly. Finally, we have what we would call personal fundamentals, which is what we're going to be really talking about in this video. Personal fundamentals are basically things that you do that are going to make your swing work. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're what most people would consider to be good fundamentals. Let me give you an example. Matt Wolff takes the club very much to the outside and gets the club across the line, then gets extremely shallow, rotates hard with his lower body, then jumps up through impact. He kind of breaks a lot of those rules that most people would consider to be fundamental to a golf swing. Again, doesn't break my rules, but breaks a lot of other people's rules because it doesn't hit a lot of those classic positions. It doesn't look like Tiger in 2000 where everything's on plane, shafts coming down at ball line, basically staying in shot and rotating the whole time. He does a lot of things that, again, breaks the rules. Should he change his swing? Absolutely not, because all the things he does matches up together so he can control his low point, face, path, contact, and his speed, hence why he's a phenomenal player. So having said that, For him, he has some personal fundamentals. Luckily, I've taught for the same guy that he got lessons from, George Yankees, so I know a lot about his swing. But let's just kind of walk through real quick. One of the fundamentals he has starts before he even swings. He kind of does a little hip pump like this before he takes the club back. And he does that to remind himself, hey, I want to try, number one, make sure I'm squaring up my hips, I'm not getting too closed off. But number two, he's trying to feel like he's going to have rotation in the downswing, so he's rehearsing that rotation before he starts coming down. That's one of his personal fundamentals. Who else on tour does a hip pump like that? Nobody that I've seen, but you can't make him change that, and you shouldn't make him change that. It's a personal fundamental for him that makes him play his best golf. So more power to him. Obviously, he takes the club extremely to the outside. That sets up the rest of his swing. He shouldn't change that. That is a personal fundamental for him. If he started getting out of position where the club got even more extreme or started rolling inside, his swing might get out of positions for him and he won't hit the ball as well. So he has certain checkpoints and positions he's looking for in his backswing in order to make his swing work. He's looking for a certain degree of shallowing. He's not trying to come down and only have a little shallowing because it won't work for him. He's not trying to get dumped under either, which is the main thing he fights. He's trying to have the correct amount of shallowing to the amount he rotates. That way he can keep his path and his face under control. So he's looking for certain checkpoints during his swing, which are basically correct for him. Nobody else is going to use those specific checkpoints. It's something that's very unique to him. The cool thing is the checkpoints you use is whatever makes your swing work. I'll give you a few more examples. I have a buddy who's friends with John Rahm. John Rahm talks about one of the feels he really likes is he likes to feel like his index finger right here is pressuring into the shaft in this direction as he comes down. Well, there's nothing fundamental about that. Some people will feel that, some people won't. Some people will have a finger that's kind of just hovering on the side of the club like this, and they won't put any pressure on there at all. But for him, he feels like he hits it his best when he's pressuring the shaft in the downswing and through the shot. Well, again, God bless him. If that helps him hit it better, that's a fundamental for him, and he should keep doing that, and he can revert back to that every time and hit it better. Oftentimes, a personal fundamental for a lot of people are going to be doing the opposite of what most people would consider to be a good technique. Doesn't mean it is a bad technique, but there's an old common term in golf called feel versus real. What we're feeling like we're doing might not necessarily be what we're really doing. Or some people are going to try and have a motion that offsets what they do because they have a motion that tends to get too extreme. Really good example is going to be, we'll talk about David Duval and we'll talk about Justin Rose. David Duval, if you watch his swing, he was one of the best players of all time. He gets up to the top of his swing, and as he comes down, he has no pull down of his arms this way. His arms stay up for a very long period of time, and he gets extremely rotated by impact. But what he would feel like is he would feel like his arms were pulling down in the downswing. Now, did he actually do that? No, his arms stayed up forever and he turned. But for him, it was a feel to kind of offset what he did to an extreme degree. And whenever he felt that in his swing, he felt like it hit it better. Justin Rose does something very similar. He goes to the top of his swing and he tries to pull down his arms this direction to get his arms in front of him and kick the shaft on a steeper plane. Most people don't want to be on a steeper plane. Most people would say getting shallower is better, especially nowadays. They would make that argument. Now, we could argue whether Justin Rose should or shouldn't do that, but for him, by kicking that club on the plane he likes and by having the feeling of pulling down, he's able to get on the plane he wants, he's able to square up his club face. And why would you ever change that when he's winning major championships and he won, I can't remember if he won the gold medal or the silver medal in Brazil, but if he's winning Olympic medals and winning majors, why are we going to change that? We're not going to change that. That's silly. So for him, that is a personal fundamental, even though for a lot of people, pulling down and kicking the shaft onto a steeper plane is not what they're looking for. So you can kind of find examples all across the board of people having their own personal fundamentals that kind of break these rules of what good fundamentals are. But if it works for their swing, don't change it. So if you find some things that you do saying like, okay, I got to go to the top of my swing, I got to feel like I pause for a second like Hideki Matsuyama, or I feel like I'm slowing down my tempo like Ernie Els, or I feel like I have very loose grip pressure, I'm taking out the tension out of my body, or I have a certain rhythm, or I have a certain two-step before I take the club back, or whatever it is, because it can be basically anything. If there's something you've done, it gives you confidence, and you've learned to do it a lot of times, and every time you come back to it, you start hitting the ball better. Even if you don't hit it great, you hit it better than you were. That's your personal fundamental. So it's important to find those things. A lot of people are going to have some trial and error with their swing, and anytime you capture some of those little golden nuggets along the way, put them in your pocket, write them down, and always come back to them, because those are personal fundamentals that are going to be better for you. Again, they might not be quote unquote good for most people, but if they work for you, that's what matters the most. So use that as best as you can to your ability. And again, you're normally going to find that when you're kind of panning for gold. If you kind of get a new feel, you get a new visual, what you want to try in your head, you want to try and copy a certain player, well, you might get a certain feel to copy that player. All of a sudden, you like that feel of that visual, and now you have something you get to use. So do with that what you will, but those personal fundamentals are more rare because they're only going to be to the individual themselves. But when you find them, super important to remember them.